tells you, be careful when you walk into your cell, always turn the light on before you go in. I said, why? Because they will try to kill you. They put baby oil in the light bulb. You go into the cell, they lock the door, you turn on the light, it explodes, and you burn to death. I said, oh, that's very nice.
The Financial Survival Network. Now more than ever. The Financial Survival Network.
Let's do it. And welcome. You are listening to and watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. Martin Armstrong is with us now. We're going to be talking about Trump's first 2 weeks, the tariffs, what is happening, the inevitable recession. Is it inevitable? And is there anything that can be done? Are the cycles rule? And that's it. Marty, it's great to have you back on the show. So quite a show for the past 2 weeks, huh?
Oh, yeah, very interesting. The Chinese curse, right? Maybe we live in interesting times.
Especially if you're an FBI agent or you work for the Department of Justice. You got real interesting times there, huh?
Well, they finally getting what they deserve, actually. And I don't know. People have to understand about government agencies. The same thing applies to NATO, etc. I mean, just take NATO as an example. They were created when there was communism. Communism failed. We really don't need NATO anymore. All right. And I've seen the internal memos. How do we remain relevant? The only way they remain relevant is by scaring the hell out of everybody. Oh, Russia's going to come in. Ukraine falls. They're going to take the rest of Europe. I mean, it's just, so send us money. They got to keep their jobs. That's what this is all about.
That's it.
And every agency is the same. I've said before, back in the 80s, after the 87, crisis, the crash there, the SEC was blaming the CFTC. The CFTC was blaming the SEC.
Yeah.
And I said, look, we should just merge the two. And I said, everybody has one regulator. And what I got out of Congress was that we can't do that because we'd have to lay off 50,000 people. So it's never about what's right or wrong or about the people. Government is not Santa Claus. They're not here to protect you. They could care less. This is all about them retaining power. That's it.
But I don't think they were.
All these agencies that you're going to see DOJ going into, it's going to be the same thing.
Yeah, you think DOJ is going to fail? Because right now, as of last night, it looks like they eliminated the USAID, which has been a deep state slush fund for over 60 years. In fact, it was started by Kennedy during the Cold War. And it's really outlived its usefulness. But now we find out they're funneling money, laundering money all over the planet. They're feeding the prosecutors that were waging lawfare against Trump. They were doing it. The Wuhan lab, they funded. Bill Kristol. I mean, the immigrants coming in, the illegal alien invasion, they've been financing that. So it looks like they're finished now. Maybe it's the first of a lot more. I mean, Marty, can they really cut $1 trillion off the budget?
Oh, they could, but will they be assassinated in trying to do so?
Yeah.
I mean, there's
yeah.
Look, just look at the testimony the day before 9/11. You had Rumsfeld, I think it was some $2 trillion was missing from the Pentagon budget.
Right.
Missing. He testified before Congress, oh, this is outrageous. I promise we'll start an investigation, tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
What happens? The plane that hit the Pentagon hit the very room where all the records were. Oh, yeah. So sorry. We can't do that now. Mm-hmm. I how, and they still say the Pentagon can't account for trillions of dollars. I mean,
Yeah.
how,
Yeah, they failed the last 7 audits, right?
yeah, I mean, look, the IRS comes in to audit your business. Oh, I can't account for that. I don't think you're going to remain in business very long.
Yeah,
Um,
you'll be gone.
yeah, they'll lock you up. They'll, shut your things down. You can't say, oh, gee, sorry, I didn't have time to do my accounting. Um, the excuses for them are substantially different. For us, we would be looking at jail time.
Yeah, well, maybe some of them are, there's purges taking place at the FBI and the DOJ. And based on your personal experience with these agencies, I'm sure you're taking a little happiness in that.
People don't understand how it works. I mean, they're up for sale. And in my case, I went to this reverse proffer where they're telling you why you should take a deal.
Mm-hmm.
They admit, oh, we know we didn't take any money. I mean, no shit. Okay. How do you get $1 billion out of a bank and nobody knows where it is? It's impossible. All right.
Yeah.
You got to wire it out. They didn't get it out of $1 bills, but they're paid for by the banks.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
The bank stole the money. The only reason, in my case, I met with my clients. I said, you have to sue the bank. They did. Then they put a gag order on me to prevent me from helping my own clients.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
typical.
all to protect the bank, and then the bank gets to plead guilty. Nobody goes to jail.
Yeah.
No fines, nothing.
Hey, no fines, huh?
Just return the money that you stole. When I asked a lawyer in New York, I said, how come no banker ever goes to jail? Quite frankly, he said, you don't shit where you eat.
And the Southern District has always been the focal point. Southern District, New York.
It's one of the most corrupt in the country. You can even Google U.S. versus Zicatello. The judge gets caught changing the transcripts. Now, if you or I changed court records, it's a jail sentence.
You have to certify
right? It's a felony.
As an attorney,
yes.
Certify the accuracy of what you're producing in New York State.
And the Second Circuit simply says, we know this is a practice in the Southern District of New York. It's rather unique. We suggest that they stop it. We don't think we have the power to order judges to obey the law.
Really?
I mean, you just can't make up this stuff.
No,
That's what Trump walked into with that. The judge wasn't even a judge. He was a prosecutor acting as the judge. How does he get the most important case in New York City history? As an acting judge?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, you can't make up this stuff.
The difference is that Trump won. He beat them all. How did he do it?
When he won the election, they were really screwed. But I can tell you what they were saying in D.C. They brought all this stuff against him. Oh, if we make him a felon, nobody will vote for him. This is what they really believed.
And have the opposite effect.
Yeah, it's even in my case, when I did a conference in 2011 because they wanted to do this movie. And I was told you'd be lucky if 25 people show up anymore. We had over 1,000 people. Yeah, and I was shocked. And I asked them, I said, why did you come? I said, I was really stunned. And they said, I wanted to make sure it was really you. Anybody can put on that thing, just says Martin Armstrong. I said, boy, you guys really don't trust government, do you? I said, no way. But, I never thought of it from that perspective. It was like,
Marty, you're a beacon. You're a beacon. I mean, I see the comments pop up on YouTube, and they're controlled opposition.
Oh
People
yeah.
don't just say this stuff. They're still, but evidently you have a pass now. They're through with you. They're on to other things, I guess, right?
Well, I think that it's gotten down to the point they just want to know what the computer says anymore. Um, whereas
Yeah.
before it was like, we want the code. I'm not giving you the code. And I think they thought that they could just,
Strong arm you.
yeah, first of all, you give them the code. That's the only thing you have.
Yeah.
Then what good are you afterwards?
And then,
You end up in a ditch.
yeah. Do you have any regrets?
No, I mean, I think everything worked out the way it was supposed to work out. Um, my lawyer, Richard Altman, they went after the
Sure.
lawyers to remove him. And his parting words to me was, "You should have fled." I said, "What?" "You should have went to England, and they would have had to put on a real case to get you back." And he says, "New York is just, forget it. They practice law their way. It's different than the rest of the country."
Yeah.
That's why when they charged Trump up there, I said the same thing. He's going to get to see what New York really is. It's just a cesspool.
Your case, Marty, reminds me a lot of the J6'ers. The
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
that they pulled on you is exactly what they did to them. Holding him with no charges.
Yeah.
Holding him, guy's a cop. He's a licensed FFL dealer. I mean, this article just appeared. It was nauseating. They raided his house 7 times, Marty. And he was charged with a misdemeanor, trespassing. He never went in to the Capitol building. He was on the West Lawn after they opened the gates up. The guards, the police opened the gates up, and he just walked over there and took pictures. They confiscated his video. And the things that these J6'ers went through is identical to your journey here.
Look, I've seen them. You wouldn't believe what they do. I mean, there was several mafia trials with people in jail for conspiracy to murder. The judge, they prosecuted, I think, 2 or 3 mafia families. And after the first one, the judge goes, "Oh, yes, I know this case. This is where we don't have a body and nobody knows actually who did it," right? Correct. So they just give a theory. All they did was find his car at the airport. They don't have a body. They didn't know if he really left or not. And they came up with 3 different theories for each mafia family why they would like to have killed him. And you just go down the line. I mean, people think, "Oh, well, they can listen to my phone calls. I have nothing to hide." Oh, really? What they do is you're on the phone, say, "Bring me, honey, pick up, 2 pizzas on the way home." That's a code word for keys of cocaine. In my vast years of experience, this is what goes on. I mean, they just lie about absolutely everything. They don't need anything.
So how does Trump basically, how does he clean up the judicial system? If we don't fix that, then nothing else really matters here. I mean, look, there are judges that put the J6'ers in prison. It was just shocking. They denied every single motion that they made, and even to the point where they wouldn't allow their lawyers from out of state to represent them. So people were forced to either use the public defender, which is just like saying, "Just take me away to jail," or spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on local counsel there. And look, I've been in a lot of cases. It's like there's never an issue, as long as a lawyer's in good standing, to have him admitted pro hac vice, it's called,
Right.
and they wouldn't do it. I mean, it was so corrupt there, and
The
it's
only
scary.
way you can deal with this is that, one, no prosecutor should be allowed to indict anybody. It should go to a committee. The committee has to vote to indict, because what happens is that prosecutor indicts you, finds out that you're innocent, and there are numerous cases like this. In Boston, and they awarded a jury over $100 million to a family because they prosecuted somebody they knew was innocent, and he died in prison.
Really?
All right. And the problem becomes they will not admit a mistake because then their personal career is affected. And court-appointed lawyers, absolutely worthless.
Yeah.
Worthless. They are just paid to do whatever the government says.
Yeah.
And, look, General Flynn, he's got out a documentary. The same thing. You do not hire a law firm from the same city.
Yeah.
Why? In my case, I had Tenzer Greenblatt in New York. They're all talking about how the judge is acting illegally. And I said, well, file a motion to recuse. Oh, we can't do that. Why? Oh, because the rest of the judges will prejudice our firm. So in other words, because of your firm, I can't get good representation. Frank Watrone hired a firm, Kecker, out of San Francisco to defend him in New York. Then that firm made a motion to recuse. We had the same judge, and went up to recuse the guy. The judge is Richard Owen. You can also Google that. The things that he ended up with, dementia. He would forget who the heck I was.
Hey, I'll never forget the first time I went into federal court, as an attorney, and there's a guy ahead of me arguing a motion, and he says to the judge, Judge, this is the law in this case. And the judge looks at him and he takes off his glasses and he stares at him for a minute and he says, young man, in this courtroom, I am the law.
Yeah, this is.
And it's like, oh my goodness, man, this is like a different world than I'm used to. There's no, federal judges appointed for life, and they take that very seriously, which means they're all carried out in a box. That's how they leave the federal bench.
Look, it's my case is probably a record. If I went up to the Supreme Court again, 2 justices would have to recuse. Sotomayor was on my case, and Kagan. Kagan was the Solicitor General. When I finally got to the Supreme Court, she's the one that told New York, you better release this guy. I'm not going to argue. How are you keeping somebody in prison on an 18-month statute for 7 years without charges? So she ordered him. She said, I'm not going to argue for you. Yeah. They had to release me. That was if I never got to the Supreme Court, they would have simply let me die in a cell.
Yeah,
that's just the way New York is. Look, when your lawyer in New York tells you, be careful when you walk into your cell, always turn the light on before you go in. I said, why? Because they will try to kill you. They put baby oil in the light bulb. You go into the cell, they lock the door, you turn on the light, it explodes, and you burn to death. I said, oh, that's very nice.
Oh, God.
I mean, it's when Epstein, just where they put him, I knew there's nobody that is going to have any possibility of bringing those people onto the stand to testify. Bill Clinton, etc. Not going to happen.
His days were numbered.
Regardless if he was guilty or not, there was never going to be a trial for that guy.
All right.
Never.
So let's talk investing. gold, stock market, cryptos, because Trump seems to be in love with cryptocurrencies.
Look, Trump, in all honesty, is living in an ancient world. His tariffs, all this stuff, it's back with the old economic theories that, we put on tariffs to protect domestic jobs. Cryptocurrency, sorry, it's not economically feasible. All right. He seems to have been bought into all this nonsense. And somebody ought to let him know that Bitcoin was actually created by the intelligence agencies. There's a white paper on it that was put out in 1996. So we know where there was never any fictional Japanese guy that created it. I mean, if some guy created blockchain, why isn't he out there suing for hundreds of millions of dollars for rights? I mean, it was created by. It came out of basically the NSA, and the whole purpose of it has been government's long time dream. I hand you $100 bill, they don't know where it came from. I give you 100 Bitcoin, they know where I got it from, and everybody else down the line. Did everybody pay their taxes on the, they want, 10% every time you do a transaction. That original $100 bill, after 10 people, they own 100% of it.
Yeah. So, all right. So stock market, you said 65,000 by 2032. You sticking with that?
Yeah. Look, when it was 20, we said our first target was 40. We reached it.
I remember 45,000. You said between 22 and 24.
What you have to understand is that 65,000 forecast is not just the stock market. You're also forecasting the purchasing power of the currency. If the currency drops by 50% in value, all right, you're at 80,000. Because everything has a international value to it. And so we have to understand that we're in a cycle. And nobody's been able to ever beat the business cycle. I mean, that was Marx's idea. Keynes also came up with it. We'll smooth it out. Arthur Burns, who was the Fed chairman when Bretton Woods collapsed, he came out and said, look, the business cycle always wins. All right. Paul Volcker put out a book, Rediscovery of the Business Cycle, in 1978. Paul came out. I even spoke to him. He says, look, your model is correct. I agree. There's an 8-year business cycle because everything's involved in it, from war to climate, you name it. Fiscal mismanagement by government. But we have to understand that the crash that is coming is going to be in the debt markets. It's government. It's not going to be the stock market. Everybody keeps looking at, the stock market is going to crash like it did in 1929. In 1929, U.S. had a balanced budget. All right. We don't have that today. This is why the central banks are in trouble. Powell raises interest rates to try and fight inflation and creates more. Why? Because basically the government is the biggest borrower in the room. So we have $1 trillion in interest expenditures this year. Then next year you got to pay interest on that trillion, besides the debt. It just multiplies. All right. The debt will more than double by the time we get to there.
Okay, so your concept of like passing out like stock investment certificates to cash out the debt, is that viable? Can that be done?
Yeah, sure. That's the only way to get out of this.
But then the market will blast off, right?
Well, yeah, look, you got $34 trillion in government debt. That's just in the US.
Mm-hmm.
All right. If that wasn't there and they could only invest in the private sector, your mortgage rates would be a lot lower because you're
Right.
competing with the government.
Crowding out.
And the government's going to, a bank is going to say, well, they're AAA. Why should I give it to you at the same rate? You got to give me a premium to give you a mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
All right. They're competing with everybody, small businesses, homeowners, etc. You eliminate that government debt. That money would then be freely invested privately. It won't be just all the stock market, but real estate, etc. Everything will benefit. You'll create more jobs.
So is it just you're printing more money, or how does this work exactly?
Well, actually, if we had printed the money instead of borrowing, the debt would be at least half what we're at now.
Right.
Why? Mainly because when you borrow it, you're paying interest on it, and it's just multiplying. All right, at 8%, you double your the debt within less than 10 years.
Interest on
All
interest.
right.
You're paying interest on
interest.
interest.
It's complicated. They basically borrowed rather than printed because of an old theory. And these are the theories that go back to when we were on a gold standard, etc.
Yeah.
If we effectively just borrow the money, we're taking money out of the system.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But if you had a $100, e-bond, and you went to the bank in the 60s, and you say, can I borrow $50 against it? The answer was no. It was illegal. So after Bretton Woods, debt is now just money that pays interest. You want to trade futures? You can post T-bills. There's no distinction between them. So the old theory of it's less inflationary to borrow than to print doesn't work anymore. Now it's more inflationary because now you're just creating money that pays interest.
Yeah.
And then the other central banks hold it as their reserves. So then what? At times more than half of the interest expenditures that we have made go outside the country.
Yeah.
So it doesn't even stimulate the domestic economy. The economy has grown, it's evolved, and nobody seems to have paid attention.
They're clueless.
They just still keep operating under these old theories, and that's my concern with Trump. He doesn't realize. I mean, there's even made comments that, we want to lower dollar so we can reduce the trade deficit. Fine. I've been called into, I can't tell you how many crises over that same stupid statement.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yes, I warned them when they did that in 1985. They were going to stand up in plaza courts. They were going to lower the dollar by 40%. I wrote to President Reagan. I said, you do this, you're going to create a crash within a couple of years. That was the 87 crash. Why? They had sold a third of the national debt to Japan. Now you're going to stand up there and say, well, we're going to lower the value of the dollar by 40%. They're going to sell. They're going to lose money. All right. So when you talk about lowering the value of the dollar to help the trade deficit, you're only looking at one aspect. What about all the money that has come in, real estate, stock market, debt market from overseas?
Mm-hmm.
You lower the dollar, they lose money, they sell, and they leave.
Right.
It's not just what you can sell, how many more widgets to somebody else. It is so asinine. It's hard to imagine how such stupidity in government exists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, these people shouldn't be remotely close to any legislation that creates anything to do with the economy.
That's for sure. Hey, so one final question: gold, silver. We're at record high gold prices now. Are we going over 3,000, 3,500? Where's it heading?
Look, gold goes up mainly because of geopolitical issues. The big problem with gold immediately is that as the dollar goes up, gold goes down. All right. So what counteracts that is war. If you look at gold, went from 100 in 1976 to 400 December 79. But it went from 400 to 875 in the last 6 weeks. Why? All right. Because that's when Russia invaded Afghanistan.
Right. I remember.
All right. So you have to understand that Europe is beating the war drums. Europe is in serious economic trouble. I was just actually this morning, I was on a Zoom call with Europe, and they're basically saying, look, everybody knows, they can feel it in their gut. This is going to collapse. You know, they can't keep the union going. There's people are blaming each other. The climate change was nonsense. Germany, which is the biggest economy for the EU, the U.S. blew up Nord Stream 1.
Yeah.
Nord Stream 2 is there. Mm-hmm. All right. But the Germans have voluntarily cut it off. Because we have to do sanctions against Russia. All right. Climate change, because of the Japanese nuclear accident, Merkel goes, oh, no nuclear plants. That's dangerous. So no nukes, no coal. She puts up all these windmills that don't create anything. All right. And so Germany has been the cornerstone of the EU economy. It has actually shrunk by 3%.
This is
Between
true.
COVID and all this stuff, you put so many small businesses out of work. This is not working. All right. And unfortunately, what you're looking at is as Europe begins to crumble, that capital is going to flow to the U.S. and push the dollar up again, as it did with World War I, World War II. So we have to pay attention here. Gold will eventually go up. We still see it, going up to like 5,000, when you look further out. It's just a function of the value of the purchasing value of the dollar itself. Even the BRICS, a little over 50% of the world population is now under the BRICS. Why? Because basically our neocons only look at war. They threatened they took Russia out of the SWIFT system, and that sent a red flag to everybody else. If we don't do as the United States says, they'll take us out. So then China, which held 10% of the debt, you had Blinken out there saying, if you help Russia, we'll do this to you.
Smart guy.
Idiot. I mean, so they create their chip system and that's it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we covered a lot there. All of you out there, my book with Martin is going to be published hopefully the next 2 or 3 weeks. If you're interested, shoot me an email, kl@kerrylutz.com, or go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free newsletter. You'll automatically get a couple of chapters for free. And make sure you go to Marty's site, armstrongeconomics.com, sign up for his daily missives. It's must reading. And Marty, it's if nothing else, it's going to be interesting for the next 4 years. We'll see what happens next.
Well, we're unfortunately going into a world recession, and it's not going to bottom until 2028. But it's more than just Trump. This is, an economic decline, probably led by more than Europe than anybody else, most likely.
Makes a lot of sense. We'll talk to you again soon. Be well.
Be well. Thanks a lot. Nice to see you over there. Take care.